Today we're talking about the 2004 animated show The Batman, specifically Season 1, Episode 8, called Q&A. Depending on when you grew up, this show was a childhood classic. Mostly because the ending, this was the first episode that came to mind in terms of discussing the show. Our episode begins with TV personality Ross Darren cutting the ribbon as the grand opening of a new Grocery Gills. Unsurprisingly, the news people don't seem particularly enthralled by a man holding a giant scissor to open a grocery store. What happens next is a bit cartoony and goofy, as our friend Physics decides to make an early departure. So Broccoli Rob and Mr. Potato Head pull this ribbon so far back, which is apparently more of a rubber band than a ribbon, and upon release, launches Ross Darren into the world's shortest Rube Goldberg machine. Also, the newscaster appears to be thoroughly enjoying this spectacle. It's pretty funny pausing during random frames in this sequence. So first he lands in a grocery cart, he goes zooming off through the street, he then hurdles towards the curb and then flies into a garbage dumpster, and then is whisked off by the garbage truck, through which the Broccoli and Mr. Potato Men escape in. So yeah, he basically gets kidnapped in broad daylight. Presumably some of the news people and onlookers thought this was a publicity stunt or something. Next, we cut to Bruce at a musical recital or fundraiser of sorts, jamming out to some funky techno music instead of the violin performance, which I thought was a funny touch, as was Bruce's abrupt realization that he should be applauding. The organizer of the show then thanks a few philanthropists, including Bruce. Bruce stands up, gives a salute, which I thought was a weird move. You'd think he'd just wave or bow or something. Anyway, another philanthropist, Herbert Ziegler, who's going to play some Beethoven as part of the concert, comes out. He sits on a whoopee cushion, which lands more laughs than you'd expect for a bunch of rich, highfalutin socialites. Then, not very far into the song, a giant duck emerges from the piano. Again, for a bunch of rich people attending a sophisticated evening of music, they're really loving this giant duck appearance. Don't think too much about how a giant duck and a man fit in a piano. He then gets pulled off, half eaten by the piano, by an umbrella like he's performing at the Apollo Theater or something. Bruce then races off to the rescue and almost gets run over by the getaway vehicle. Then there's a car chase which ends because the Batmobile is too big to fit through a tunnel. Cut to the Batcave, and Bruce and Alfred are trying to figure out what's going on with these kidnappings. This is made significantly easier when Bruce runs findconnection.exe or something on Ross and Herbert. The program says match, but they don't seem particularly compatible. It turns out they both work together on a game show called Think, Thank, Thunk. This detail gives longtime comic book enthusiasts and Batman fans a pretty strong clue as to who the master behind all these kidnappings are. Next, we see a clip from the game show. Ross hits a pretty smooth spin and microphone toss. He then introduced the contestants. New challenger, Yelena Klymanov. Klymanov? Seriously? I don't think that's a particularly authentic Russian last name. More of a woman in a Bond-filled type of name. And then the reigning champion she's facing is Artie Brown, a kid with a normal and not evil-looking smile. Also, there doesn't seem to be much thanking going on in the show, but whatever. Artie gets a question to win the round, which is to name all the 13 moons of Jupiter, the year of their discovery, and who discovered them. This seems like a pretty crazy question for a game show to have, even one with trivia geniuses like Artie Brown. It's apparently a very unforgiving show, too, because Artie appears to get the entire answer right except for mistakenly saying 1937 instead of 1938 for Lysithea. I don't know how it's pronounced. Yelena wins. Artie wins a lifetime supply of Cremello chocolate bars. Artie's mother then claimed the show was rigged and sued. Ziegler, being rich, hires better lawyers and has friends in City Hall, and the case gets dismissed. You can tell it's a fictional show because the rich and powerful get away with whatever they want, unlike in real life. Yelena, it turns out, became a world-class chess champion. I guess she really climbing off her way up the ladder. For a city rampant with crime and wacky villains, Gotham also has a thriving chess scene, as this stadium-sized building is hosting the chess tournament. I'm glad retired players like Bishop and Knight have gotten their jerseys up in the rafter. There's also this great shot of the computer she's playing against staring ominously, which is pretty funny. So, Yelena's going to win, which is pretty impressive considering Gary Kasparov lost to Deep Blue back in 1997, but I guess she's just that good. I feel bad for the people with courtside seats. They're not really going to be able to see what's going on at all. They're doing a hilariously impractical giant chess thing where two guys run to move every piece. Then the bishop starts running on its own, not diagonally, mind you, a clue that it's up to no good. The bigger clue being when it basically swallows up Yelena whole and runs off. Batman shows up right before the bishop escapes, revealing it was just one little person in the bishop piece. How the heck did they see where they were going? Batman then fights and loses to the little person equivalent of the Harlem Globetrotters, who've got all sorts of crazy moves. Anyway, in all the chaos, this band of numbered hooligans get away with Yelena. Meanwhile, the captor of Ross, Ziegler, and Yelena reveals himself to them. Oh my gosh, it's Artie Brown. In the comics, I believe he goes by the villain name Cluemaster, which he doesn't use until near the end of the episode. None of them recognize him initially, perhaps because it's been 30 years and he's apparently been eating a lot of his lifetime supply of Cremellos. Speaking of 30 years, what has he been doing this entire time exactly? Artie says they cheated him. He says he was winning too much, so they gave Yelena an easy question and let her win. Yelena asks Ziegler if this is true. Ziegler doesn't outright admit it or deny it, so it's not actually entirely clear if he did. But I'd say it is implied that they did maybe cheat based on how Ziegler reacts, and also immediately tries to pay off Artie. Artie replies, quote, "Money can't soothe the pain of humiliation, nor can my consolation prize of a lifetime supply of Cremellos." Ziegler asks what he wants of them. Artie says revenge and explains that they're going to have a rematch of sorts. He does seem rather fixated on games. If memory serves in the comics, I believe in-universe Cluemaster was inspired by the Riddler. Cluemaster says, "In the spirit of gamesmanship, I'm giving you all a chance to walk away scot-free if you can defeat me in a rematch." Back at the Batcave, Alfred and Bruce discuss the situation as they try to figure out where Artie and the kidnappees are. Bruce seems confused as to why Artie would throw everything away, school, life, etc., all because of a game. Alfred then says, "You, on the other hand, never were much for games, even as a child." To which Bruce replies, "There was work to be done." This exchange seems odd to me as it's implying that Bruce has always been a brooding, serious person even as a kid, which is an interesting read of the character. I'm by no means a Batman expert, but I haven't seen much to support the premise that the murder of his parents wasn't what sent him towards the brooding and serious path of vigilante justice, but that he was already a serious person even as a child. What work was there to be done as a child anyway? Maybe it's more referring to his heart, and that even as a kid he had a heart for doing the right thing and was fighting for what he thought was right even as a kid. Who knows? As Alfred is talking about Artie's continued obsession with his childhood embarrassment, Bruce realizes where a person obsessed with their past would be. We find the hostages on a recreated, or perhaps the original set, who knows, of Think Thank Thunk. The audience seems a little wooden. Ever the game show host, Artie's taken the liberty of making a helpful diagram to explain the rules of the rematch. If they can stump him on 3 questions, they get to leave. If he gets all 3 right, they get lowered into a vat of acid. I like how they're numbered. 1 is the liars and 2 is the acid. Really just a one-step process. I don't think the numbers are necessary. A young Tier Zoo is trying to figure out who wins in a fight between a T-Rex and a fire truck. Batman arrives at what turns out to be Artie's house and asks the kid to watch his car. Are the little people his brothers? A team he coached? It's unclear from the photos. Artie's mom is sitting in the dark staring at a static screen, which is super depressing. She does tell Batman that Artie is in his room downstairs. Don't bother thinking about how he fit this entire game show in his basement. Cut to Artie, who has just finished naming all 50 Argonauts of Jason and Argonauts fame. Another question which is fighting against my suspension of disbelief on how much information one person can know about seemingly everything. Artie now has 1 point on the board. The platform suspending them above the acid lowers a bit accordingly. He gets the next point right off screen while Batman fights a few of the numbered goons upstairs. Last to ask a question is Yelena, and unsurprisingly hers appears to be the most clever. She asks what the number pi is, presumably hoping to win on a technicality, as it's an infinite number, so the question in a sense can never be fully answered. Artie gives the general definition of pi, and in the spirit of gamesmanship yet again, names the first 100 digits. More Batman fighting these same goons in the meantime. Cluemaster has now finished naming the first 100 digits, and things are not looking good for Team Liars. Artie is about to smack the like and subscribe button when Batman bursts in. Once again, ever the gamesman, Artie gives Batman the opportunity to ask 1 question. 1 chance to save their lives. Batman says he doesn't play games. Artie says he will, or they die. Batman then verbally roasts him for being a loser and wasting his life. Here's the exchange that makes this a noteworthy episode in my opinion. Arthur says, "Stop Cluemaster and they go free." Batman says that doesn't seem fair. Is there anything the great Arthur Brown doesn't know? "You'll have to find out," he replies. Batman asks, "What can I ask you about?" Arthur, growing impatient, says anything. No topic off limits? History, science, literature, music, biology, current events? Anything. Let's go already. Any guesses what question Batman asks? Well, he asks him to name the true identity of the Batman. Artie doesn't take it very well and throws a fit similar to the one he threw 30 years ago. In his anger, he presses the button to lower Team Liars into the acid. This is interesting, as up until this point he's been fairly generous, all things considered, regarding the game and the rules. He didn't really have to name 100 digits of pi, or give Batman a bonus round question, but he did. But this is how far he's been pushed, facing echoes of his past. Also, he's quite a sore loser. Batman throws batarangs, which make an awesome sound when thrown, so good job sound team on that one, to stop the platform from lowering. Artie throws boxes of Cremellos at him, almost knocking him into the vat of acid. Now, I may be showing my ignorance here, but I've never kicked a fat person in the stomach before. Is this how it works? In this show, as in others, it seems to work like the Marvel mutant The Blob. Leave a comment, I guess, on whether or not this is accurate. Artie walks over, and the ground is literally shaking with each step, which seems a bit much. Batman then flies a T-47 around the AT-AT's legs until it falls over. Team Liars are saved, hooray. Batman almost clubs Mrs. Brown in the face with a batarang until he realizes it's her. Back at Wayne Manor, Bruce challenges Alfred to a game of checkers, mentioning that he didn't think he was much for games until he beat Cluemaster at his own. I get that this is ostensibly character growth and him broadening his horizons and opening his mind, but it also kind of just sounds like he likes games where he wins, which I'd say is true for most people. Now that I've won, I like games. No, I think you just like winning. In terms of what I like about this episode, it's nice to see Batman doing some actual detective work, findconnection.exe notwithstanding, as opposed to just driving up to whichever bank is currently being robbed by Arkham Asylum's escapee of the week. More importantly, he has to defeat Cluemaster using cleverness, not his fists. He beat him on his own grounds, whereas Cluemaster's most direct corollary, the Riddler, tends to leave clues about where to find him, and then they fight or something. It's less of a Riddler's arrogance and ego leading to his own destruction, although Cluemaster certainly has a big ego. Batman managed to beat him at his own game. He found basically the one question that Cluemaster wouldn't know the answer to. He also seemed to come up with it pretty quickly, which is impressive. He didn't know going in necessarily that he'd be roped into Cluemaster's game show rematch. He appealed to his ego at first, wore out his patience so he'd make the scope of the questions impossibly large, and then snuck current events in there at the end. Just to play Monday morning quarterback for a second, it would have been nice to see Mrs. Brown getting some help at the end of the episode, but they never really address what happens to her. Overall, I think it was just an interesting episode exploring Batman's intellect as opposed to his ability to punch things, although he does a decent amount of punching things as well. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more.